In the early hours of February 20th, 1970, a modest home in the 100 block of East 13th Street in Port Angeles, Washington, fell silent in a way that would never be reversed. Inside that home lived Bertha Louise Burke, a young mother of 3, navigating the strain of a marriage in collapse and the uncertainty of a future she was trying to reshape. That night, Bertha was last known to be inside her residence. There were no reports of raised voices spilling into the street, no neighbors describing an obvious disturbance, no emergency calls placed in the early morning hours. And yet, sometime after midnight, Bertha disappeared. She did not take her purse. She did not take her children. And she was never seen or heard from again. When daylight arrived, 3 children, ranging in age from 2 to 6 years old, were found alone inside the house. Their mother was gone. The home showed no clear explanation for her absence. There was no note, no confirmed destination, no evidence that she had planned to leave permanently. For investigators, the circumstances immediately raised concern. Mothers do not typically vanish without their children. They do not leave essential belongings behind. And they do not walk away from a home in the dead of night without leaving a trace, unless something interrupts that choice. From the beginning, Bertha Louise Burke's disappearance was treated not as a voluntary departure, but as a missing persons case shaped by suspicion. Welcome to Case Files of the Missing, where the search for answers does not end with time. Please like, comment, and subscribe. To understand why Bertha's disappearance remains unresolved more than 5 decades later, investigators first had to understand the pressures surrounding her life in 1970. Bertha had married Douglas A. Burke in 1958. By the end of the 1960s, their marriage was unraveling. Court records and family accounts would later reveal that Bertha was in the process of seeking a divorce on the grounds of cruelty. The relationship had deteriorated to the point where separation was no longer theoretical, it was actively underway. At the time she vanished, Bertha was also seeing another man. This was not a secret arrangement quietly tucked away from the realities of her marriage. It was part of a broader shift in her life, one that included independence, difficult choices, and potential conflict. Divorces, especially in the late 1960s and early 1970s, carried social, legal, and financial consequences. Tensions surrounding custody, reputation, and control were not uncommon. For investigators, these dynamics mattered. Because when a disappearance occurs amid emotional strain, ongoing separation, and unresolved conflict, the circle of interest narrows quickly. From early on, law enforcement identified Bertha's husband, Douglas A. Burke, as a person of interest. What makes Bertha's disappearance especially troubling is the timing. She is believed to have left her home sometime after midnight. This was not a morning errand. This was not a daytime decision. This was the quietest, most vulnerable hour of the night. Her purse remained behind, a detail investigators would never overlook. Personal items often act as anchors in missing persons cases, helping determine whether someone left willingly or was interrupted mid-routine. In Bertha's case, the absence of her purse suggested she did not plan to go far, or did not plan to leave at all. Even more concerning was the fact that her children were left alone. There is no indication that Bertha had arranged for childcare, contacted a neighbor, or made preparations for an absence. Whatever occurred that night appears sudden. And sudden events, especially during separations marked by conflict, are rarely accidental. In 1970, investigative tools were limited compared to today. There were no digital footprints, no cell phone pings, no surveillance cameras on residential streets. Investigators relied on witness statements, physical searches, and the willingness of those close to Bertha to speak openly. Yet even in those early stages, foul play was suspected. Bertha did not access her finances. She did not contact friends or family. She did not resurface under a new identity, a common misconception in missing persons folklore, but a rarity in reality. Her absence was complete. As months turned into years, leads dried up. The case settled into that painful category known as a cold case, unresolved, unanswered, and quietly lingering in the background of Port Angeles history. Douglas Burke remained a central figure in the investigation. Police publicly named him as a person of interest, a designation that carries weight even decades later. It does not mean charges were filed. It does not mean guilt was proven. But it does mean investigators believed he possessed information critical to understanding what happened to Bertha. Douglas would go on to remarry after Bertha's disappearance. Life continued, at least on the surface. But the case did not disappear. 33 years after Bertha vanished, investigators revisited the case with renewed focus. In 2003, law enforcement conducted targeted searches using ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs, tools unavailable in 1970, but capable of revealing disturbances beneath the surface. Two locations became the focus. The first was the driveway of Bertha's former home on East 13th Street. The second was a parking lot behind Douglas Burke's former workplace on East 8th Street. Technology indicated that something had been buried beneath a concrete slab. For a brief moment, it appeared that decades of silence might finally give way to answers. Authorities excavated the area. Nothing was found. No remains, no personal items. No evidence capable of closing the case? After the search concluded, investigators stated they did not plan to search further. When Douglas Burke died in 2008, his obituary included a detail that reignited quiet concern. It stated that Bertha had died in February 1970, the same month she disappeared. No remains had ever been recovered. No official determination had ever been made, and her case was still classified as unsolved. For many, the wording felt premature. For others, it felt revealing. Bertha Louise Burke is not just a name from a faded file. She was a mother. She was a woman navigating independence. She was someone whose absence left children growing up without answers. Her disappearance remains one of Washington state's unresolved missing persons cases, shaped by domestic strain, unanswered evidence, and investigative limitations of its time. Foul play is suspected. Her case remains open, and her story is not finished. Because cold cases are not closed by time. They are reopened by memory, by attention, by someone recognizing that a detail never made sense. If you lived in Port Angeles in 1970, if you knew Bertha Louise Burke, if you remember anything unusual about that night, even the smallest detail could matter. Missing persons cases are often resolved not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through quiet recollections resurfacing when a name is spoken again. Bertha's name deserves to be spoken. Her disappearance deserves to be remembered. And her story deserves answers. This is Case Files of the Missing, where the search for answers does not end with time. For more intriguing missing person and cold case stories, please like, comment, and subscribe.